Hey folks, how are you doing today? Now, welcome to our next free monthly webinar where we are going to be talking about it's basically how to network and market with podcasting. So we've got a presentation, and basically what happens with these webinars is that there's a half-hour kind of presentation that happens where I'll go through different slides and give you loads of different insights, and then it's your chance to ask any questions in the following half hour. So the first bit is presentation, the next bit is Q&A. And we are focusing on the marketing and networking tools that podcasting kind of gives us. Now, we've got a presentation, which you can see just there. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller for now, but it's going to be just there. And the reason why we're doing this free webinar also is because we're launching this course on the 23rd of June. It's available to pre-order at the moment. I'll put a QR code right at the end so you can do it. But effectively, this is a mini version of it. We're going to be covering a couple of different units per section, just to kind of give you an insight in a half-hour kind of presentation way. So the different sections we've got of the presentation of the course we start off with obviously the instruction, then we talk about how to incorporate it into your marketing plan. So integrating podcasting into your marketing plan. We go into the 3 roles, which are listeners, guests, and hosts. We'll talk about that a bit more in a bit, and how as a listener you can use it as a networking tool and a marketing tool. We'll then go on to being a guest, and we'll talk about the opportunities you have as a guest, and obviously we'll finish it off with being a host and how a podcast host can work with the networking and marketing aspects as well. There's about 30 different, there's over 30 different sections in here in the course, which means that you will be kind of having different bits to kind of look at different times. Each unit has a little video description and then a call to action at the end, a little kind of bit of homework or activity to complete. So that's how the course kind of runs. But for today, we are going to be focusing on a couple of units in this kind of webinar. Now, if you are watching live, and I can see that a few people are, then please put in the comments below if you've been a guest on a podcast, if you've got your own podcast, if you are just a listener to a podcast, and kind of what level you are. Are you a listener, guest, or host? And let's kick it off with a couple of units from section 1, integrating podcasting into your marketing plan. So the first step is you've got to, if it is based on the title marketing plan, this is if you're a business or a community project and you want the podcast to sit alongside what you're already doing. Now I'm assuming that you kind of have social media and you have got a network in place and a community in place at this point. If you haven't, then that's probably where you should start off with, is creating those social media platforms where people can connect with you. But when you're lining your podcast into your business goals and missions, it's quite simple. If you know your why for your business, you know the business purpose, the vision of the business, then as long as you've got that in your podcast at the same time as the heart of your podcast, you're going to be onto a winner. But it's not just that. What you also want to do is have the same goals for your business as you do for your podcast. Now, if that's spreading awareness of a particular topic, that's what the podcast should be about. If it's about helping a particular topic or audience or community, then that's what the podcast should be about as well. And the content should fit inside that as well. Also, it should be in your marketing plan as well. We all know that if it's not in a plan of such, and if you've got a marketing plan, then it definitely should be in there. But if it's not, that's going to be the first thing that's going to kind of go if times are tough or budgets are stretched or time allocation is non-existent. So you need to make sure that actually your podcast fits alongside it. The easiest way to do that is to look at your marketing plan and fit it inside there and see how the podcast can, in fact, not take over the marketing plan, but how it fits into it. So, for instance, if you've got a seasonal business and you know that at different points in time, your customers are focusing on different bits and bobs and different topics, then your podcast should reflect that, and your podcast should be alongside that. Also, if you've got monthly themes in your business, it's dead simple, because at least that way you've got your podcast will have monthly themes as well. Kind of get the idea, but you want to make sure that it's aligned to your goals and your business and your mission. And as I said before, there's 3 different types of roles that we're all going to be talking about that we can all play when we're engaging with podcasts. We can be a listener, which is obviously very passive. Normally, I'll tell you why that might not be the best case scenario if you want to network at the same time. But you've got a listener where you listen to content. You've got your guests where you go into podcasts and you share your experiences, share your insights as well. And then you've got your hosts, which are all encompassing. You are in charge of the show and you invite people in, or you share your personal kind of stories, insights, your business topics, that kind of thing on your own show. So they're the 3 different types there. And as I said before, if you can let me know who you are, if you are a listener, a guest, and a host, and to be fair, you can be each of those at different points in time. You could be a listener who wants to be a guest on a podcast. You could be a guest on a podcast or want to be a regular guest on different podcasts who loves listening as well. Hell, you can be a host who guests on podcasts and listens to podcasts at the same time. It's not just one or the other. It can be all 3. So let us know who you are. Okay, so let's work on the first part, which is podcast listeners as networkers and marketers. So first off, let's focus on why you should listen to podcasts. Now, this is a question I always ask people if they want to start their own podcast is, do you listen to podcasts at the moment? And you get so much knowledge out of listening to podcasts. There's millions of different podcasts out there around different themes. So you can really find the right podcast for you in terms of if you want a podcast just to relax after a day at work. If you want a podcast to kind of teach you something while you're going on a commute. If you want to just have a little kind of chit chat in your ears while you're walking a dog. There's loads of different ones out there, and I haven't even included the world of audio dramas and storytelling and that kind of stuff. So why listen to podcasts? It's nice and straightforward. It can build insights because you're listening, you're absorbing that content, but also connections as well. This is the big thing that people don't do, is when they listen to a podcast, they just do nothing with it afterwards. You listen to the podcast, it might be half hour, it could be an hour, hell, it could be a mammoth 2.5 hour, 3 hour session if you want. But you listen to a podcast and then you don't do anything about it. You don't write anything down. You don't contact the host and say, fantastic episode, I really like that. You don't pop onto their social media and kind of look at the comments in the posts and then start engaging with people. That's some of the mistakes that people make. So listening to podcasts is not only a great way of, first of all, getting into their world, but it's also a great way of building connections to them as well. So that's just a few reasons why you should listen to a podcast. I use it to relax. I use it to learn about stuff. And I also use it as a research tool for other podcasts as well. Plus also if I want to start my own podcast or if I'm going to guest on a podcast, you know for sure I'm going to be listening to that podcast to make sure that I'm listening to what is going to come up for me. Say there's loads of network opportunities for listeners, and I've just mentioned a few. If you listen to a podcast, the straightforward way is following that podcast on their social media platforms. Check out their website and see if they've got a podcast community. And in that podcast community, which could be a Facebook group, it could be just in the comments on the post that they send through, it could be Patreon, which sometimes you pay, well, most of the time you pay for at different levels, but you do get some cool stuff in return. But when you're looking at networking opportunities, you want to start those small conversations. So look at the comments and start talking to people in the comments. Start tagging the hosts in your own post and say, I've just listened to this podcast and I've just listened to this topic, this topic. Thank you so much. The host's name, which are tagged in, for posting it. You know, it's a great way of just slowly getting into their world and for them to kind of know you as well. And what you want to do is you want them to start sharing your messages, and for your listeners, for your audience to start knowing them. In return, you'll probably if they share your messages, their audience is going to start seeing you as well. It's a networking opportunity online. It's basically a little bit of TLC, I suppose. You know, you're not just listening it and going into the podcast and saying, hey, this is my stuff. You're actually kind of finding out a little bit more about them and engaging with them to start off with. But that's just one quick networking opportunity for listeners. I've already mentioned a couple of mistakes people make: listening to podcasts and not doing anything with it. Really common thing. Not connecting with a host, not connecting with a community are two other big, powerful things that people don't tend to do. If you are looking to use networking listen to podcasts as a networking tool, you want to start those small conversations. So therefore, doing this and start connecting with people is probably the first step. Also, to be fair, if you're just listening to people and they don't know who you are, then you're not really getting the full benefit. If you're not joining their podcast community, if what they give you in return is worth it, then again, you're not getting the whole story. So you want to make sure that if you do like a podcast and you do start listening to podcasts, then please do something about it afterwards, even if it's just writing down a few notes after each episode, or contacting the host to say thank you so much for sharing it, or contacting a guest and sharing it and saying thank you very much, I really enjoyed these insights, and then connect with them on their social medias. I haven't even touched upon that, but again, that's something that most people don't do. So I hope that kind of makes it a bit easier for you to understand the role of a listener when it comes to networking and marketing as well. Not so much the marketing side of it, but apart from sharing it on your socials when you've listened to a good episode, that's obviously key. But more networking, starting those small conversations. Next up is going to be podcast guests as networkers and marketers. So it all starts with preparing to be a guest. So this is where you want to set goals and start researching. So I'm going to take both of those steps at different points. So setting goals could be not as straightforward as listeners or anything like that, because you can't control that. That's down to the host and that's down to their audience. What you can do is you can set your goals for the amount of conversations that you're going to be having afterwards. You could be, okay, I want maybe X amount of people to go onto my website, so therefore I need to mention my website in the call to action at the end of the show. It could be those things that you can control. There's no point worrying about what you can't control in terms of listener numbers, when the show goes out and all that kind of stuff. That's out of your control. What you can do is you can control your actions and your messages that you send out. So with setting goals, don't do what the classic one is and say, I want to reach 1,000 people this episode. You could set a goal as I want to share 3 different topics or 3 different insights on this podcast, and I want the call to action to be clear and that people can go away and understand. That is a great goal to have. You could also set a goal in terms of the conversations that you have with people. It could be the fact that you want to start connecting with that podcasting community beforehand. So therefore, actually, one of my goals is to go on to listen to their last 5 shows, connect with their guests and look at the comments and start liking some of the comments. You can see how slowly you're warming up that audience. They don't know you at the start, but if you do the last 5 and you've got enough time in between then and your show going out to be able to do that, then suddenly they've got 5 shows, which could be 5 weeks, it could be 10 weeks, it could be 5 months, for instance, but you've got that time of them understanding you and seeing you turn up on their platforms, in their comments, talking. And then when your episode comes out, they'll be much warmer to you rather than someone being completely cold who doesn't know you at all. You spent the time doing it, and that's where setting the goals helps. Because if you've got goals for what you want to say, how many people you want to connect with, and the amount of episodes you're going to research, then that's going to be golden. And when you're doing that research, you're going to be listening to those shows. You're going to be listening to the conversations that the host has with the people. You're going to be looking at the type of phrases that they use. Do they like short answers? Do they like long answers? Are there common questions that comes up that you can prepare for? You can figure out how your key messages fits into that format, and what stories would resonate with their audiences more because you've done the research and you're in that community. See how it all fits in. So doing your research really works well. But again, that starts with listening to the podcast before you go on. So preparing a guest is a big, big topic. And for me, it's about setting goals and researching, and not just doing it once, but doing it for every podcast appearance you go on to. This isn't a silver bullet, folks. This isn't something that you can just do once and it'll be done. You need to keep doing it and keep being on it all the time. You also want to make sure that you're making an impact. Now, what you ideally want to do is you want to make sure you've got a set of key messages that you want to share on your podcast. And you would have shared this, hopefully, with the hosts before you go onto the show. Now, if you have, then what you can do with the research that you've gathered by listening to the podcasts, you can make sure that your messages are tailored to that podcast. So, as I said before, if the host prefers long, couple of minutes kind of question answers to their questions, you make sure you've got a story in place for every key message to pad it out for that period. But if they like really short answers, you've got a shortened version ready to go, and you practiced it. You've also, to be fair, those key messages, you've probably stood up, you've probably said them out loud, because the more times we say something, the easier it comes out of our mouth and the better the delivery is. So what you want to do is you want to practice those key messages. So know the key messages first, and then practice them and say them out loud. If you really want to go to the next level, you can record yourself and you can then watch it back 3 times. You can watch it with the sound off, so you can just see your body language and how your face comes across and how you use your hands, so your body language. You can use it with the sound on, but you close your eyes, so you can just hear the audio, which means that you're only analyzing what you can hear, and then you watch it a 3rd time with as normal, so with the audio and visual on, and you're watching both. If you've done all those, you will be able to see the impact of your body language on camera. You'll be able to hear what your voice actually sounds like as well, which for some people is a bit weird, but it's what the audience is going to listen to hear when they listen to the podcast. So you need to get used to it. But if you're going to make an impact and deliver your messages, you first of all need to know your key messages. Then you need to practice them. And then obviously you need to review them afterwards as well. You can do that on the podcast itself, but by that time it's too late. So I would recommend practicing it beforehand. But that's how you could really make an impact, especially if you know the podcast audience as well. Going back to the point 1 that I made when I said about researching the show, you're going to sit and reach it and listen to the guests before you. You're going to know what topics have come up in previous episodes. So again, you can tailor your messages to that audience. You can see the types of comments that they make about those questions, about those topics. So again, you can tailor your content to it. This is why making an impact isn't just a one job hit. It takes time and energy to do it. But once you do, you nail it. And the more times you do it, the easier it will get. Because frankly, there's only so many different ways how you can share your message. So just practice them, but make sure you literally have your key messages, you practice them, and then you tailor them, and then you kind of review them afterwards. It makes a massive, massive difference. Also, what makes a massive difference is promoting the episode afterwards. And the number of ways you can promote an episode online is crazy. There's loads of different ways of doing it. The main thing is, don't keep it quiet. If you're a guest on a podcast, share it. Share the podcast image. Share the image that any marketing assets that the host gives you. Share it. Share links with your audience of how to listen to it, where they can get more information from, where they can join the podcast community. Also share with it, just not on social media. If you've got a blog on your website, share it on there. If you've got a page on your website with all the information of your podcast appearances, put it on there. If you've got on Spotify, then create a playlist of your appearances. Make it easy for people to find where you've been on podcasts. That's the best way you can do it. If you've got a newsletter, send it out to your newsletter, and then get people, if they can, and other people who you've connected with to share it as well. If you're at meetings, talk about it. If you're on it, especially if you're at networking meetings, put it in your 40 seconds. I've just been on a podcast talking about this. Do that. It's any opportunity you have to mention it, do it. The number one thing that really bugs me is when you share as a host. If you share it with a guest and they don't do anything with it. And it happens more often than you think. So if you are a guest on a podcast, please promote the episode, but don't just promote it on social media. Post it in the other places. Send out a press release. Talk about it in face-to-face. Just don't keep it a secret. And that goes on to the common mistakes guests make after the interview. And that is, the number one mistake is they don't share it. They just don't share it. And that's the one thing that as a host, you can tell when the guest has shared it, because the listener figures goes up. But the thing is, why wouldn't you share it as well? This is you being, you've been asked on a podcast to share your insights and your ideas with a new community. Why wouldn't you want to share that? It's a great honor being a guest on the podcast. So make the most of it. Make the most of it and share it. Be proud of it. Okay, you're putting yourself above the parapet. People can listen to it and shoot you down. I get that. But the host wouldn't allow you to do that. And they wouldn't be, and if they've got any concerns about the content, they wouldn't put it out there. They're putting their name against your reputation and your ideas. So please, if you're a guest on a podcast, the number one mistake I would recommend anyone fixing straight away is sharing it afterwards. Please, please, please don't keep it a secret and share. Next up is the podcast hosts as networking and marketers. Now, we've already covered a lot of stuff in this one here, but with this one here, I'm going to take it right back to the beginning and put listeners right in the center of it. And this one's all about building a community and engaging your listeners. Now, to do that, engaging means two-way conversation. So it's not just you posting to them, it's that you asking questions and them giving you information at the same time. It's you interacting with them on a daily basis. So all of this stuff takes time and it takes energy. But I didn't say it was going to be easy. And I did say it wasn't going to be the silver, but that's going to change it. But if you haven't got a community for your podcast, set up a LinkedIn group, a Facebook group, set it up on Patreon, wherever you hang out, set it up on there, and get people into that community from the podcast. Include a call to action on your podcast. Join us in this community, and start engaging with them. Ask them questions so you can get responses back. If you release a episode on a Monday, you should be releasing the episode on a Monday. On a Tuesday, you should have a follow-up question ready to go. On a Wednesday, it might be a clip for the people who just want to catch up a little bit of it. On a Thursday, another question. And then on Friday, in case you missed it, or a follow-up kind of interview with a person or some kind of interactive thing. And then you have the weekend off, and then you repeat the cycle again on Monday with new episodes. So you want at least 2 or 3 questions ready to go for every episode that you do. So for instance, if you've got an episode about let's throw it out there, so redundant, if you've got a HR podcast and you've got a question about redundancy, you've got an expert talking about redundancies, one question could straight be, have you ever been made redundant? How did it make you feel? Next time it could be and so this person spoke about this topic, this part of redundancy, how did you find it? Next part is, if you're a HR professional, how do you deal with redundancies? We were talking about the same topic, but different parts. Each question could relate to a different part of the podcast. So when you're recording the podcast, you could just be noting down questions as you go along, if you're clever. And then you've already got them kind of wrote down. But engaging with your listeners, it's got to be done outside of the platforms that you're listening to the podcasts in. You can do it in the comments a little bit, but that's really hard because a lot of people don't tend to look at the comments while they're listening to podcasts. I know I don't. So do it outside and have a group or community where you can do that. Once you start building it in, I remember, as I said, have a call to action in your podcast to get people in there to start off with. You can mention it in your newsletter, in your social media posts, all that kind of stuff you can do. But engaging is the big thing, and having a two-way conversation is vital for this. Ask them questions, and polls are great to do this as well because it's nice and straightforward for them to do, and you get the interaction as well. But share ideas with them ahead of time. Get them to give ideas maybe for future episodes as well, topics that they want to listen to and watch. You can do that, but really engage and start building that community. Also, one thing I don't see a lot of people do is nurture relationships with past guests, and the people who do it really, really well. Now, with this, what you want to do is you want to basically keep them in your network. This is all about keeping them in your network and seeing how you both can work with each other on different projects at different times. You spend this time talking to them, and most of the time, I'll probably say 90% of the time, it's going to be a cracking conversation. You can walk away going, good person. I like this one. Because why would you get someone who you didn't like on your podcast? It just wouldn't work. And if they do, then maybe, that's the 10% that we don't talk about. But if you are a guest on if you are a host and you've got a guest on the podcast, you've just spent loads of time talking to them, getting to know them. Surely you want to continue that conversation. So if you've got any other projects that they can get involved with, ask them if they want to be a part of that. If they've got the community, if you've got a community, ask them if they want to do a live or something else in the community at a different time. If you've got an event coming up, see if they can get involved and also ask them, these are how I can help you. These are the opportunities potentially for you. I would love to do stuff for your community as well. Have you got somewhere where I can jump on live and talk about the podcast? Or can I record a mini video for you to share with your audiences promoting you as a guest on my podcast? Bush, straight away, you give them value. You give them value. And it's not just a one transactional thing that you've done. This is a opportunity to build that relationship. And the longer you can keep that relationship going, the more likely it possibly, if you've got the right person and they've got the right connections, they might start referring you to different people. They might start posting your social media messages. They might actually start conversing you in different places as well. And suddenly you haven't got a cold relationship, you've got a really warm relationship. And that's what we really want. So when I talk about nurturing relationships with past guests, it could be, as I said before, inviting them to upcoming stuff. But it could just be following on social media and then checking in with them once in a while via message service. Everyone's going to be slightly different, but you just want to keep that relationship alive with past guests. As I said, the people who do it really, really well, do it really, really well. But most people don't tend to do it and just do it a couple of times, then it goes cold. And I think this is the last bit. Yeah, this is the last one on this bit, and that's measuring success. Now, what you want to do is you want to track your return on investment and networking opportunity outcomes. So, as I said before, when you do set goals and research, this could be about numbers, but it could also be the amount of people who you contact afterwards, the amount of people who you keep in touch with. It could be tracking how often you actually talk to people, previous guests. It could be kind of having a little sheet with your figures about your listeners, about your listener base and how it's growing, or which are the popular episodes and that kind of stuff. It could be that, but it doesn't have to be. Networking outcomes is very rarely a numbers game. What it could be a case of having a list of people who you're in touch with, or a list of people you want to get in touch with. So therefore, you would probably go online and follow them and start interacting with them on their comments and their posts. But whatever you want to do, please just have a record of it. So first of all, you don't forget. But second of all, what's going to work and what's not going to work in the future. And the last section is conclusions and next steps. Now, for me, I always do a kind of a big key takeaway. And a key takeaway for me, is split into the 3 different sections. So for listeners, the key takeaway is to start doing something after you've listened to a podcast, whether that is literally going on to a social media that of the people you've just listened to and say fantastic, or join in a community. Do something with it. Write down a couple of notes after you've listened to it. Basically, if you listen to something, just write something down. Do a action. For a guest, please prepare, but also prepare your messages. Make sure that they're all tailored to that particular one and do your research. But also, please promote the episode afterwards. They're my 2 big key takeaways. Basically, create your key messages, review them, all that kind of stuff, and then promote the hell out of it when you've got it. And hosts, it's all about the community. It's all about the community and making sure that actually you've got a place where people feel happy coming to you, listening to it, and engaging with your podcasts. And they feel safe actually to have kind of proper, decent conversation in there and not being afraid to bounce away because their views aren't respected. Make sure you are fostering that kind of community, and also then nurture your past relationships with your previous guests. They're my big recaps for all of this. Well, for this webinar, there's obviously more in the actual workshop as well, in the actual course. But the next thing really is to start putting all of those bits interaction. There's no point in watching this webinar. If you've been watching this now, we've been talking for 29 minutes at this point in time. There's no point in watching this and not doing anything about it. So make sure you've put 3 key actions that you're going to action. Whether that is literally, I'm going to put myself forward as a guest, or I'm going to start listening to it, or I'm going to start planning my own podcasts. Whatever it is, start doing something. There's no point doing all of this and watching this up to this point if you're not going to do anything. So please, next steps is put in the podcasting toolkit interaction. I've given you the tools. They're not all of the tools, but I've given you some of the tools. Please put them into action. Okay, so if you've liked this, here's the link to the course. It's $44.99, and it's got loads more than what I've covered here. This is this little bit is now just a selling bit, but honestly, if you don't do that, that's fine, because you've got loads of content that you've already absorbed and checked out. But scan the QR code there, and you can go from there. Now, the whole podcasting toolkit is got a number of different courses on there. So whether you're just getting started or looking to sharpen your podcasting skills, there's going to be loads of courses on there. Now, you can check it out by scanning the code, but I'm also going to put the link into the kind of comments there as well, which has gone on to YouTube and Streamyard, has gone to LinkedIn, but I'll post that onto LinkedIn afterwards. You've got also other courses. You've got the podcast launch guide there as well. You've got the standout guest guide that is there as well, so you can scan that. And you've also got the children's activity providers course just there. The one thing I want to leave you with, and before we go into the questions and answers session, is this quote from Steph Thomas, which is, every big opportunity starts with a little conversation. Now, I just want to repeat that. Every big opportunity starts with a little conversation. Now, if you think about everything that I've said during this webinar, that sums it up. And even if you're a listener, you're a guest, or a host, how many conversations can you start? How many conversations can you start, and how many relationships can you nurture from there? I'll just leave you with that, because that is massive. But that is pretty much the whole webinar done. It is. So if you've got any questions about marketing, if you've got any questions about networking, or any just general podcasting questions, then please let me know. Put them into the comments. Now, I know the LinkedIn comments aren't coming through, so I'm going to pop onto LinkedIn to see if there are any questions on there. But if you have got any questions on YouTube or Streamyard, or wherever you're watching, please put them in here. Put them in there. And I think actually the LinkedIn comments have been coming through, which is quite cool. I said, if there's no comments and no questions, that is all good with me. It is, because it means I can finish early, and that's all good. It is. But no, let us know. Just to let you know, we are going to be back here next month with another course, another free webinar, and that one is going to be on June so it's not going to be June 11th, that's today. It's going to be on July the 9th, and that is going to be the podcasting for children's activity providers. So very niche, but still really cool. And if you're children's activity provider, or you do anything in the children's activity providers remit, then let us know. The next one that is slightly different is going to be on the 15th of October, and that's going to be when we're going to be talking about how to launch your own podcast. That's the podcast launch guide live webinar. That's going to be on the 15th of October, and then on the 12th of November, we're going to have being art of the standout guest. So we're going to be talking about how to really make sure that you are a great guest on a podcast. So that's what's coming up in terms of the upcoming talks. It is. The last little bit I want to share with you is I have a free newsletter on LinkedIn, which every weekday I share just an idea or a article, that kind of thing, that's going to help you move forward with your podcasting skills. So I'm going to put that into the comment just there as well. And that is completely free. completely free. There's 189 articles on it at the moment. So there's loads of different articles, and I cover literally everything from being a guest to a listener to a host. We've just done a whole section of what you can learn from famous people, and also we take a look at AI. We talk about future technologies. We cover so much in there, but by the sounds of it, doesn't seem to be any questions, which means that I've either been really, really good or really, really bad. So we'll see what happens. But effectively, thank you very much for your time today. If you have any questions, please connect with me on LinkedIn. You can do that via the newsletter. And everyone, take care. Have a great time, folks. See you later. Bye-bye.